Hello, 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 blood priestesses. Wow, it is Scorpio season already. I can't even believe it. I am not in my normal garb. I usually have a beautiful blood priestess cape and a great background for all of my 13 moons meditations, but as you can see, I do not. I look rather casual today, and that's because I am in the middle of a pretty big move. I'm literally just moving down the street, but I am packing up my entire house and doing all of this on my own with my 10-month-old who's running around like crazy. So I have not had the opportunity to film this on time, nor have I had the opportunity to film this in the sacred manner that I normally like to do this in. So I apologize in advance that you're watching this video from a much more casual perspective, but I assure you that the information is the same nonetheless. So, I wanted to dive in to what this Scorpio season is going to be all about for us because it is an intense one. I mean, I know we are all feeling this on some level. The scorpion comes in with its stinger and, is very unapologetic with how it strikes. And it strikes from a very purposeful way, a way to help evoke deeper healing, deeper transformation within all of us. And the Scorpio energy is really powerful at, sort of dragging us down to go into the depths of the truth of what we need to uncover in order to grow. And it's funny because right now, this Scorpio season is happening during Mercury retrograde as well as a bunch of other planets that are retrograde. So it kind of feels on an astrological perspective that like everything isn't really intense right now. And it's really allowed us to kind of detach from, maybe the more heavier energies of Scorpio. I've just been noticing within myself that since Scorpio energy has come through, and since I'm filming this, several days into Scorpio season, that I've been noticing much more of an ebb and flow with the intensity. Whereas normally I love Scorpio season because I am all about going deep and dark and getting right to the like crux of it and like, just really soaking up Halloween and Samhain and all of the witchy stuff that comes with this time of year. And this year's just been very odd. Very odd for a lot of reasons because of COVID and how Halloween is very much dialed back to what it normally is culturally. And then also just what's happening astrologically. So I think in a way, a lot of us are sort of disembodying a little bit from the intensity. I know last month in 13 Moons, we talked a lot about embodiment energy and about how Libra was really coaxing us to come deeper and showing us where we get triggered and we choose to not be embodied. And now this season, which is usually a little bit easier to actually come into our bodies, especially when we celebrate, any kind of witchiness around the season, it's a little bit harder this year. It's a little bit harder to connect because the connection feels so intense and so painful. And so it's a little bit more aloof. And that's okay too. We can be a little bit more aloof, a little, less grounded, a little bit more up in the air as we go through this because even if that is how we are feeling, there is still a lot of energy that is pulling and pushing through us, that is pulling our transformation out of us and pushing us into transformation, whether we are in our bodies or not. So that's the good news is we're still growing, we're still embodying all of this, even if we're trying not to, which I am trying not to since I am in the middle of some craziness in my house right now. So that is a good thing for all of us with this intense energy. So I wanted to focus on 13 moons, the points of ouchiness that are going to come up over this season. And the one theme that I keep seeing over and over and over again every time I connect with Scorpio energy is this idea of trapped grief. So, grief is really a beautiful energy that helps us understand how deeply we loved someone or something. And, the energy of grief is a necessary process for us to really allow our emotions to move through all of our bodies simultaneously and allow us to heal and step into a bigger, better version of ourselves. But what can happen along the way is the grief can feel so intense, whether it's grieving a person or a part of ourselves or a version of ourselves or something we loved or cherished or an idea of something. Grief can come in all kinds of ways, and it can hit us really intensely to a point where we decide, you know what? I don't want to process this. I'm just going to stuff it down. And then we stuff it down and we continue on. Other times we have no choice but to stuff it down because, let's say we're moms or we're, career people and we need to continue forward. Otherwise, we're going to sacrifice too much. So we stuff it down and we don't deal with it and we say we're going to deal with it at a later time. Well, Scorpio is an amazing time for us to dive into this. And a lot of times, Scorpio energy forces us to dive into this, whether we're ready for it or not. And that's because, where do you find scorpions? You find them under giant rocks, right? You have to lift the rock up, and then all of a sudden the scorpion comes out. And sometimes with grief, that's what has to happen. The grief is basically boulderized by whatever coping mechanism we're using. And so sometimes we don't even think that we have grief. And that kind of can be the most toxic place for us if we take a look at our energy field during Scorpio season and we're like, I don't really have any grief. I processed that all out. That can be a big red flag. And so this season, I wanted to talk to that and really shine a light on that because in case that is you and you don't think that there's any grief in your space that's up, I want to point that out so that you don't get knocked over by it when Scorpio brings it up because Scorpio is going to bring it up. And I know for myself, I've already been experiencing a lot of grief. For me, it's been a lot of grief of who I was before I was a mom, the freedom that I had before I was a mom, the flexibility, the time, the selfishness that I could have, the patience that I had, basically everything about myself before I was a mom is up in my face this season. So that's fun. And I'm sure that everybody is going to go through some level of grief release that happens. And some of us are better at grief release than others. But this season, I am offering all of us a ritual to heal that grief, whether it is known or unknown grief. And that's super important because even if we think we don't have grief in our space, we all have grief. We all have problems processing loss. It's just kind of part of the human condition. So we can grieve all sorts of things, and it's healthy to do so, but we want to make sure that that grief actually is processed out and doesn't get stuck in our space. Then we just put a big rock over it, and then the scorpion doesn't get a chance to evolve. Because that's my next point in our work tonight is I really want to talk about the evolution of the scorpion because I've seen this a couple places on Instagram, and I think it's so fascinating and so exciting to think about how the different zodiac signs evolve through their own evolution and their own process. And so the scorpion starts out as this creature, this insect that lives in the darkness and hides under rocks and really avoids others, avoids things. And if it feels threatened, it stings with its tail. And that is, such a beautiful description of scorpion energy. A lot of times those who have a lot of scorpion energy tend to be a bit, reclusive, a bit very inwardly drawn, very wanting to go deep and dark and be in the darkness. And then if anybody gets too close or triggers them, that stinger comes out, and that stinger can be very ouchy, and it can be very deadly, and can cut bridges and end relationships very quickly. And that's the level 1 of the scorpion evolution. And then level 2 moves into the eagle. So the scorpion evolves into the eagle. And the eagle is a beautiful creature that is able to see and take all of the wisdom that the scorpion has experienced and learned through its darkness, through being in the darkness and exploring the darkness and becoming the master of the darkness. And now as the eagle, it takes all of that information and it takes it as high as it can into the sky. And so we're going from the darkest dark to the highest heights, right? The deepest, darkest to the highest, lightest. And the eagle is able to see all kinds of things from a different perspective with this deep, dark information. And so the eagle energy is really beautiful. And then that is level 2, and that moves into level 3, which is the phoenix. And the phoenix is all about the process of being able to die and be reborn, going into the darkness, surrendering to that darkness, surrendering to that death, dying, allowing that time to integrate that death, and then rising from the ashes as something new and more magnificent and going even higher than the eagle could soar. And then doing that over and over and over and over again. And one of the reasons why grief comes up so strongly in Scorpio season is because the phoenix is the epitome of processing grief in a very healthy and transformational and alchemical way, where when we hold grief, we tend to be more like level 1 in the scorpion, where we hold it and we just allow that giant boulder to sit on us, and it really impedes our happiness and our joy in life. So this month, I really encourage you, as you work through the material, as you listen to the playlist and you do your journal prompts and you create your altar and even join in our circles, I really encourage you to ask yourself where you are on this spectrum, because we're not always one thing at all times during this season. You know, sometimes we're going to feel very much like the scorpion. Other times we're going to feel rebirthed and powerful like the phoenix. Other times we're going to feel like the eagle, where we're just like high and everything's going really well and we feel very full of light. We have these ebbs and flows throughout Scorpio season, and it's going to be really interesting for us to reflect on where we are at different processes, especially as we hit different levels of grief and different levels of intensity. The other fun thing that's happening this year, this is where I'm at, this week and this month, is that we are having a blue moon, a full moon on Samhain, on Halloween. And it is going to be a very, very, very powerful full moon. And for 13 moons, we're going to do something kind of fun, because this season is so intense. We need a little bit more levity, a little bit more fun. And so we're going to have a good old-fashioned middle school seance. And we're going to join on Zoom and come together and call upon the unseen, call upon the dead, and do it all in sacred sisterhood. So it's safe, but also kind of fun and spooky. And we'll tell each other our fun, spooky tales of, you know, any kind of psychic stuff or ghost stories that we've had, and really connect with each other through our fun, like scary kind of middle school sleepover stuff. So that's going to be really fun and bring a little bit of levity to all this intensity, all this death, all this transformation. And then we're going to move back into the new moon in Scorpio. And hopefully by the time we hit the new moon in Scorpio at the end of this month, we will be able to really claim our inner phoenix as not only the one that just died and was reborn, but the one that can do it over and over and over again and has no resistance to that and is welcoming of that entire process. So that's kind of what this season is all about, is where do we stop ourselves from the continuous surrender to death and the continuous embrace of life. You know, for me personally, I've been hitting a pain ridge around this, especially when it comes to motherhood, because I've just been like, how much sacrifice can I possibly give? Like, I'm just at my wit's end with sacrifice, and yet I'm being asked to sacrifice more. I'm being asked to die more. And the other thing that came up for me too is usually when you sacrifice, there is a reward that happens on the other side of it. And what happens when you are sacrificing and there's no reward, or at least there's no immediate reward that you can see, or the reward is, way later down the line? How do you handle that? How do you deal with that? Where in the evolutionary spectrum are you when you have to deal with sacrifice that isn't immediately rewarded? So lots to think about this Scorpio season. I'm really looking forward to circling with you guys on the full moon for our seance, and then kind of coming back together at the new moon at the end of this month so that we could kind of talk about what's happening in our space and allowing ourselves to be reborn over and over and over again, and really talk about those different portals. So I am so excited. I really hope you enjoy all of the work and all of the material this month, and I will see you in Sacred Sisterhood. All right. Bye, sisters.